Have you ever been mid-conversation in English, completely confident, and then suddenly frozen, not because you didn't know what to say, but because two words felt so similar you couldn't decide which one was right? Words like speech and talk, or chance and opportunity, they seem interchangeable on the surface, but using the wrong one can make your English sound unnatural even to you. Today, we're going to fix that. We're going to walk through 10 of the most commonly confused word pairs in English, and by the end of this lesson, you'll know exactly when to use each one, no more second guessing. No more hesitation. Let's jump straight in with our first pair, speech and talk. These two words both involve using your voice to communicate, so it's completely understandable why people mix them up. But here's the key difference: speech is formal. It's something you prepare in advance, something you stand up in front of people to deliver. A politician giving an address to the nation, a student presenting at graduation, a best man speaking at a wedding, those are all speeches. The word carries weight, structure, and intention. Talk, on the other hand, is the complete opposite in tone. It's casual, relaxed, and spontaneous, the kind of communication that happens naturally between people. When you catch up with a friend over coffee, you're not giving a speech, you're having a talk. Let's bring this to life with a few examples. He gave a powerful speech at the conference, that's formal, prepared, and in front of an audience. Now compare that with let's talk about it after his speech. Here, two people are having a casual conversation about what they just heard. Another one, her speech at the wedding was beautiful, clearly a prepared, formal moment, while we talked for hours after the wedding describes a relaxed, flowing conversation between people enjoying the evening. The structure of the moment tells you which word to use. Is it prepared and formal? Use speech. Is it natural and conversational? Use talk. Now let's move to our second pair, vision and dream. Both words point towards something in the future, something desired or imagined, but they operate on very different levels. A vision is strategic. It's a clear, forward-thinking plan or idea, usually connected to long-term goals, leadership, or purpose. When a company says it has a vision, it means it has a defined direction it's working toward. When a leader talks about their vision, they're describing a structured picture of what they want to build or change. It's purposeful and grounded, even when it's ambitious. A dream, however, is more personal and emotional. It can literally refer to what your mind creates while you sleep, but in everyday conversation, it usually means something you deeply wish for: a dream job, a dream home, a dream life. Dreams are about longing and aspiration. They don't always come with a plan, and that's perfectly fine. Consider these examples. He has a vision to change the world. This suggests he's not just wishing for change, he's working toward it with intention. Contrast that with he dreams of traveling the world, which beautifully captures a personal wish, a longing, something heartfelt but perhaps not yet planned. Similarly, the company's vision is very clear, tells us about direction and strategy, while my dream is to become a singer speaks to something deeply personal and emotionally charged. One is a roadmap. The other is a wish, and both are powerful, just in different ways. Our third pair is one that trips up even advanced English learners: query and doubt. At first glance, they both seem to involve not knowing something, but the situations in which you use them are quite different. A query is a formal or polished way of asking for information. It's the word you'd use in a professional email, a customer service interaction, or an official setting. If you need clarification about a process, a product, or a policy, you raise a query. It's neutral, respectful, and information-seeking. A doubt, on the other hand, is about uncertainty or confusion, specifically when you're not sure whether something is correct. You might have a doubt about an answer on a test, about a grammar rule you just learned, or about a formula in a physics problem. Doubt signals internal confusion, not a request for new information. Look at how the examples highlight this contrast. I have a query regarding my order. You need more information, so you're reaching out formally. I have a doubt about this answer. You've seen the answer, but something doesn't feel right and you're confused about it. Another pair. Please send your queries to our support team. A professional invitation for questions versus the salesman cleared all my doubts about using the product, meaning the customer had confusion and needed clarification, not just information. So to lock this in, when you're in a professional or official setting and you want to ask for information, use query. When you're confused or uncertain about something you've already encountered, use doubt. These two words might seem close, but once you feel the difference, you'll never mix them up again. And the best way to make that happen, try writing one sentence with each word right now. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be yours. Because the moment you use a word yourself, it stops being confusing and starts becoming natural. We've already covered 3-word pairs, and hopefully you're starting to see a pattern. English often uses 2 words that feel similar on the surface, but reveal their true difference the moment you look at the context and intention behind them. That's exactly what we're going to keep exploring. So let's move forward and talk about end and finish, 2 words that both suggest something is over, but in very different ways. End refers to the final point or moment of something. It describes when something naturally stops, not because someone completed a task, but simply because it reached its conclusion. We use end for things like movies, journeys, events, relationships, or periods of time. There's no personal effort attached to it, things just end. Finish, however, is entirely about completing something. It means you did what you were supposed to do, you followed through, you got it done. We use finish for tasks, work, food, activities, things that require effort and intention to bring to completion. The distinction becomes crystal clear through examples. The movie ended at midnight, the film reached its natural conclusion at a specific time. Nobody had to do anything for that to happen. But I finished watching the movie and slept here. A person actively completed the experience of watching. The effort is on them. Try another one. The meeting ended early describes a meeting that concluded before its scheduled time, while I will finish the meeting before 3 p.m. Means someone is taking responsibility for wrapping it up. Same event, completely different emphasis. When something stops on its own, use end. When you're the one completing it, use finish. Next up, let's look at look and view, and yes, both involve seeing, but that's where the similarity ends. Look is an action. It's the deliberate act of directing your eyes toward something. You choose to look, it's intentional and active, and it's almost always used as a verb. View, on the other hand, is typically a noun. It refers either to what you can see from a particular place, a scenic landscape, a skyline, a panorama, or to your opinion or perspective on something. Here's how these play out in real sentences. Look at the sky, it's so clear, you're directing someone to turn their eyes upward to perform the action of seeing. The view from the hill is beautiful. Here, view describes what can be seen from that spot, the scene itself. Now consider, he looked at me and smiled. That's an active, intentional moment of eye contact. Versus, I have a different view on this topic, where view means opinion or perspective, not something visual at all. So look is the act of seeing, and view is either the scene you see or what you think. Keep that distinction in your mind, and these two will never confuse you again. Now we're stepping into territory that confuses people across all levels of English: cause and reason. Both words explain why something happened, but they approach the explanation from different angles. Cause is about origin. It identifies the source or trigger of something, and it's most commonly used in neutral or negative contexts. When something goes wrong, we look for its cause. Reason, on the other hand, is about explanation and justification. It tells us why someone did something or why something turned out a certain way, and it works in both positive and negative situations. Look at these examples side by side. The cause of the traffic was an accident. The accident is the origin, the trigger that set everything else in motion. The reason I am late is traffic. Here, a person is explaining their situation, offering a justification. Same traffic, but two different functions. One more, smoking is the major cause of cancer, identifying the source of a health problem. She has a reason to be angry, explaining why her emotional response makes sense. When you're pointing to what started something, especially a problem, use cause. When you're explaining a decision, an action, or a situation, use reason. Let's move on to safety and security, a pair that sounds almost interchangeable in casual conversation, but carries a meaningful difference once you dig in. Safety is protection from accidental harm. It's about preventing injuries, avoiding risks, and keeping people physically well. Safety protocols, safety gear, safety rules, all of these exist to stop accidents from happening. Security, by contrast, is protection from intentional harm. It's about guarding against threats, crime, theft, or deliberate attack. Security systems, security personnel, security checks, these exist because someone might choose to cause harm. The examples make this vivid. Wear a helmet for your safety. The concern here is accidental injury, something that could happen by chance. There is tight security at the airport. This is about preventing deliberate threats, which is why trained personnel and surveillance systems are involved. Safety rules must be followed in the factory. Factories use safety rules to prevent workplace accidents. The office has strong security systems. The office uses security to protect against unauthorized access or theft. Accidents versus intentions. That one contrast unlocks both words completely. We're now halfway through our list, and the lesson is only getting more interesting. The word pairs ahead are ones that people misuse constantly. even in professional settings, even in writing, even by people who have been speaking English for years. So let's keep going because every word pair we cover is another layer of confidence you're adding to your English. Our next pair is journey and trip, and yes, both involve traveling, but they capture completely different aspects of the experience. A journey is about the act of traveling itself, the process, the distance, the experience of moving from one place to another. When you talk about a journey, you're focusing on what happens along the way, not the destination. It's often used for travel that is long, meaningful, or even difficult. The word carries a sense of depth, as though the travel itself holds significance. A trip, on the other hand, is the complete experience of going somewhere and coming back. The focus is on the purpose and the visit, what you did there, why you went, what you experienced. Trips tend to be shorter in nature, a vacation, a business trip, a weekend getaway, and the emphasis is on the whole event, including the return. Let the examples do the work here. The journey from Delhi to Mumbai was tiring. The speaker is focusing on the physical experience of traveling that route, the hours, the distance, the fatigue. But we went on a trip to Mumbai shifts the focus entirely. It means you went there, you explored, you did things, and you came back. The journey is about getting there. The trip is about the whole experience. Another example, during her journey, she met many interesting people. The encounters happened while traveling along the way. Her trip to the US was fun. This covers everything: the flight, the visit, the activities, the return. One word captures the road, the other captures the whole story. Now let's tackle a pair that genuinely challenges even academic English speakers: possibility and probability. These two words both talk about the chance of something happening, but the level of certainty they express is very different. Possibility is the broader, more general term. It simply means something can happen. There's a chance, you're not ruling it out, but you're not making any claims about how likely it is. It's open-ended and often used in everyday conversation. Probability, on the other hand, is far more specific. It tells you how likely something is to happen. It deals in numbers, percentages, statistics, and calculations. This is the word scientists, mathematicians, weather forecasters, and analysts use. When there's data behind the claim, probability is the right word. Compare these: there is a possibility of rain tomorrow. Rain could happen, but we're not saying how likely it is. The probability of rain tomorrow is 80%. Now we have a specific figure, a calculated likelihood. That number changes everything. Similarly, is there any possibility of getting tickets? A casual question about whether it's even an option. What is the probability of winning this game? A more analytical question seeking a calculated answer. Possibility opens the door. Probability tells you how wide that door is. And now for our final pair of the lesson: advice and suggestion. These two are perhaps the most deceptively similar on our entire list. They both involve one person offering something to another to help them decide or act, but the weight, tone, and seriousness behind them are quite different. Advice comes from knowledge or experience. It's serious, considered, and often important. When someone gives you advice, they're guiding you with genuine intention. It carries authority, not in an aggressive way, but in the way of someone who knows something and wants to help you navigate it properly. You might seek advice on a career decision, a health concern, a major life change. Suggestion, by contrast, is lighter. It's an idea or option offered casually without pressure. It can easily be accepted or ignored, and that's perfectly fine because a suggestion was never meant to carry the weight of advice. It's friendly, optional, and low stakes. You might make a suggestion about which restaurant to try or how to organize a project differently. Look at the examples. My teacher gave me good advice. This is serious, meaningful guidance rooted in the teacher's experience and genuine concern for the student's growth. The teacher has a suggestion for your project. This is a lighter, optional idea that the student can take or leave. Now listen to how the tone shifts in these two. Can you give me some advice about my career? You're asking for serious, informed guidance because the stakes are high. Can you suggest the best career options in 2025? You're asking for ideas, options to consider, not definitive direction. Same topic, completely different level of weight. When the situation is serious and guidance comes from real experience, it's advice. When it's an informal idea freely offered, it's a suggestion. Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've covered so far, because the sheer number of word pairs we've worked through might make it feel like a lot, and it is. But notice something: in every single case, the difference between the two words came down to context and intention. That's the real lesson underneath all of these examples. English isn't just about knowing words, it's about understanding the situation they belong to. And that understanding is exactly what separates someone who speaks English from someone who speaks it well. Now, before we go back and fully reinforce what we've learned, let's talk about why these distinctions matter in real life, not just in exams or grammar exercises, but in the actual moments when you're speaking or writing in English. Imagine you're in a job interview and someone asks for your opinion on a company strategy. If you say, I have a doubt about this plan instead of I have a query about this plan, you've sent a very different message than you intended. One signals confusion and uncertainty, the other signals intellectual engagement and the desire for more information. That's the kind of difference that shapes how people perceive you. Or imagine you're writing a professional email to a support team, and you write, I have a suggestion regarding my order instead of I have a query regarding my order. Now you've accidentally implied. You're giving them business advice, rather than asking for help with your purchase. These aren't dramatic mistakes, but they add up. They create friction, confusion, and sometimes even unintended impressions. The more precisely you use language, the more powerfully you communicate, and the more confident you feel doing it. Let's also think about pairs like safety and security, which come up constantly in professional environments. If you're writing a report for a manufacturing company and you confuse these two, the meaning of your entire document shifts. Safety protocols and security protocols are completely different departments with completely different responsibilities. One handles accident prevention, the other handles threat prevention. Mixing them up in a formal document isn't just a grammar error, it's a factual error. So these distinctions aren't pedantic, they're practical. The same applies to possibility and probability. If you're in a scientific, financial, or data-driven conversation, and you use possibility when the situation calls for probability, you undercut the precision your audience is expecting. You move from a calculated statement to a vague one, and in those contexts, vagueness loses credibility. Whether you're a student, a professional, or simply someone who wants to communicate more clearly in English, knowing the right word for the right moment is a genuine skill, and today, you're building it. Now let's also revisit vision and dream, because this pair carries something worth emphasizing beyond just vocabulary. In professional settings, business meetings, leadership conversations, job interviews, using dream where vision is expected can unintentionally make your ideas sound wishful rather than strategic. If an interviewer asks about your long-term plans and you say, I dream of leading a team one day, it sounds personal and emotional. If you say, my vision is to lead a high-performing team and drive innovation in this field, it sounds purposeful and grounded. The content might be the same, but the word choice reframes everything. And that's the deeper takeaway from today's lesson. Word choice isn't just about being grammatically correct. It's about tone, register, and the impression your language creates. Every pair we've studied today has its own register, its own level of formality, its own emotional weight, its own situational context. Query belongs in professional environments. Doubt belongs in learning environments. Speech belongs on a stage, talk belongs over coffee, journey belongs when the road matters, trip belongs when the whole experience does. So how do you get better at this? The honest answer is by using these words, not just knowing them. Every time you're about to write or speak and you reach for one of these words, pause for just a second and ask yourself, which situation am I in? Is this formal or casual? Is this about an accident or a threat? Am I explaining or justifying? Am I talking about the road or the whole experience? That one extra second of thought will, over time, become instinct. And instinct is fluency. One of the most effective ways to build that instinct is through deliberate practice. Take any one of the pairs from today, pick the one that confused you most, and write 3 sentences using each word, not copied from this lesson, your own sentences. About your life, your work, your thoughts. Because when language connects to your personal experience, it stops being a rule and becomes a reflex. That's when real progress happens. It's also worth noting that these aren't rare or academic words. Every single pair we've covered today shows up in news articles, workplace emails, everyday conversations, and English proficiency tests. These are the words that distinguish a good English speaker from a great one. And the fact that you're here, working through them carefully and intentionally, already puts you ahead of the majority of learners who simply skip the detail and move on. There's something remarkable that happens when you start paying attention to word pairs like the ones we've been studying. You begin to notice them everywhere, in movies, in articles, in meetings, in songs. And instead of feeling confused when you encounter them, you feel a quiet confidence, because you know exactly what's happening and why the writer or speaker chose that specific word. That awareness is the mark of someone who is genuinely advancing in English, and it's exactly what this lesson is designed to build. Let's use this part of our lesson to go deeper, not just reviewing the pairs we've covered, but understanding how to apply them in the kinds of situations you actually face. Because knowing a definition is one thing, knowing how to deploy a word in the right moment under real conditions is something else entirely. Start with end and finish and think about how often these come up in workplace communication. Deadlines, meetings, projects, all of these rely on precise language. If your manager asks when you'll be done with a report and you say the report will end soon, it sounds strange, almost as if the report is doing something on its own. But I will finish the report by Friday is crisp, professional, and clear. You're the one taking ownership of its completion. On the other hand, if someone asks when the conference call concluded, saying the call finished sounds slightly off. The call ended at noon is the natural choice, because the call reached its conclusion on its own, not through someone's deliberate effort to complete it. Now take cause and reason into a similar professional scenario. Imagine you're writing a report on a workplace incident. The cause of the equipment failure was a power surge. You're identifying the origin of the problem, what triggered it. But if your supervisor asks why you chose a particular solution, you'd say the reason I chose this approach was its proven track record. You're offering a justification. An explanation for a decision you made. Both sentences involve explaining why, but one is about diagnosing a situation and the other is about defending a choice. In a formal report, mixing these up would confuse your reader about whether you're analyzing a problem or justifying an action. Consider look and view in an academic or business writing context. View is an incredibly useful word when you want to express perspective or opinion professionally. In my view, this strategy needs refinement sounds measured and intelligent. In my look, this strategy needs refinement. Well, that isn't even grammatical because look in this sense doesn't function as a noun the way view does. This is why understanding parts of speech matters alongside meaning. Look is an action, view is a perspective or a scene. When you're expressing your stance on something in a formal setting, view is almost always the right choice. Now bring advice and suggestion into a mentoring or team scenario. Imagine you're a senior employee and a junior colleague asks for your input on their presentation. If you say I have a suggestion, maybe start with the key findings instead of the background. That's light, collaborative, and easy to take or leave. But if that same colleague is about to make a serious career mistake, you might say I want to give you some advice. Don't send that email without checking with HR first. The shift in weight is palpable. One is a creative nudge. The other is a genuine warning rooted in experience. Knowing when to offer a suggestion and when to give advice is not just a vocabulary skill, it's a social and professional intelligence. And speaking of professional intelligence, let's revisit possibility and probability through the lens of business communication. In a meeting, if someone asks whether a product launch can happen by Q3 and you say there is a possibility, you're signaling openness without commitment, useful when you don't yet have the data. But if you've run the numbers and the data supports a specific likelihood, saying the probability of a successful Q3 launch based on current projections is around 70% is far more powerful. It shows analytical rigor. It builds confidence in your assessment. In data-driven environments, the difference between these two words is the difference between an opinion and a conclusion. What about journey and trip? Can they show up in professional contexts too? Absolutely. In leadership and motivational communication, journey is frequently used metaphorically. Our company's journey toward sustainability has been challenging but rewarding. The word implies depth, struggle, transformation, and ongoing progress. Our company's trip toward sustainability just doesn't land the same way. A trip sounds short and light, while a journey sounds meaningful and weighty. Writers and speakers choose journey when they want to convey significance. They choose trip when they want to describe a concrete, bounded experience with a beginning and an end. And then there's speech and talk, a pair that becomes particularly interesting in leadership communication. A CEO who delivers a speech at the annual general meeting is in formal mode, scripted, authoritative, public-facing. But the same CEO who sits down for a talk with a struggling employee is sending a completely different signal, approachable, human, private, conversational. Same person, same building, two completely different communicative acts. The word you choose signals to your listener what kind of interaction this is going to be, even before a single other word is spoken. We've now worked through all 10 word pairs, and the depth of what we've covered is genuinely substantial. But this final part isn't just a summary, it's the most important section of the entire lesson, because knowing information and owning it are two very different things. This is where we turn knowledge into instinct. Let's do a rapid but meaningful review. Speech is formal and prepared, talk is casual and spontaneous. Vision is a strategic plan for the future, dream is a personal wish or aspiration. Query is a formal request for information, doubt is internal uncertainty or confusion. End describes when something naturally concludes, finish describes when someone actively completes a task. Look is the action of directing your eyes, view is either the scene you see or your opinion. Cause identifies the source or origin of something, reason explains a decision or situation. Safety protects against accidental harm, security protects against intentional threats. Journey focuses on the experience of traveling, trip captures the whole event of going somewhere and returning. Possibility means something can happen, probability tells you how likely it is. And finally, advice is serious guidance from experience, suggestion is a light, optional idea. 10 pairs, 20 words, each one now with a clear place and purpose in your vocabulary. But let's not stop there, let's talk about what comes next, because the real work happens outside of lessons. It happens in the moments when you pick up your phone to write a message, or open your mouth to speak in a meeting, or sit down to write an email and you pause just for a second. And choose the right word instead of the convenient one. Those moments repeated hundreds of times are what build fluency. One of the best exercises you can do after a lesson like this is to revisit your own writing, old emails, messages. Even diary entries if you keep one, and look for places where you used one of these words. Then ask yourself, did I use it correctly? Could I have used the pair word instead? Would that have changed the meaning? This kind of self-auditing is incredibly powerful because it connects the vocabulary to your real life, your real communication, your real patterns. Another technique is to notice these words in English media, podcasts, YouTube videos, news articles, TV shows, and pay attention to how native speakers and professional writers use them. You'll find that once you know the distinction, you'll start noticing these words everywhere, and each time you spot one being used correctly. It reinforces the lesson in a way that no amount of memorization can match. And here's something worth thinking about. The reason these word pairs are so commonly confused isn't because English speakers are careless, it's because these pairs are genuinely close in meaning. They share territory. The difference lies at the edges, in the nuance, in the specific angle each word takes on a shared concept. That's what makes English such a rich and expressive language. For almost every idea you want to communicate, there are multiple words to choose from, and each one adds a slightly different shade of meaning. Your job as someone who is actively developing your English is to build a collection of those shades, so that when you speak or write, you're painting with the full palette rather than just a few basic colors. Let's also acknowledge something important. Making mistakes with these words is normal. It's not a sign of failure, it's a sign that you're working with vocabulary that is genuinely subtle. Even proficient English speakers, including those who use English as their first language, sometimes reach for the wrong word in this territory. What matters isn't perfection, what matters is awareness. The moment you become aware of a distinction, you start correcting yourself naturally, and over time, the correction becomes automatic. If there's one word pair from today's lesson that still feels a little slippery, write it down. Put it somewhere you'll see it, a sticky note on your desk, a reminder on your phone, the background of your laptop. Give that pair extra attention over the next few days. Use both words in sentences, notice them when you read, say them out loud, because repetition across different contexts is the fastest path to true retention. And remember, learning vocabulary in pairs is one of the most efficient ways to study English, because you're not just learning what a word means, you're learning what it doesn't mean. You're building contrast and clarity at the same time. Every pair you master makes your English sharper, more precise, and more natural to those who hear or read it. So here is your challenge before the next lesson. Go back through all 10 pairs and write one original sentence for each word, 20 sentences in total. Make them personal. Make them relevant to your life, your work, your thoughts. Because vocabulary that lives in your experience will always stay with you longer than vocabulary that only lives on a worksheet. You've done something genuinely valuable today. You came in with 10 sources of confusion, and you're leaving with 10 clear distinctions and dozens of real examples to anchor them. Keep practicing, keep noticing, and keep building, because every lesson like this one is a step toward the kind of English fluency where the right words come naturally, effortlessly. And exactly when you need them. Keep going, you're doing better than you think. 2/2 Claude Fable 5 is currently unavailable. Learn more, opens in new tab.